Okay, here we go. That he'll he'll tweak this and that in. Hi, and welcome back to the Wild West Tennis Podcast, brought to you by QualityShot Tennis. Today, it's kind of a flashback for me. We have Richard Pagliaro from Tennis Now on. The man has been covering tennis and many other sports since the 90s. I met him in the early 2000s. Richard, welcome.
Brad, it's great to see you, and it's been a long time. It's really great to see you and talk to you.
Richard, the same goes here, and I think I'd like to start out with talking about the U.S. Open, just to look back, because, well, first off, you've been covering the tennis since the '90s. What was this your 30th U.S. Open? How many have you been to?
It's in that range. I started in the early 90s, but my streak ended with the pandemic, so I wasn't able to cover that one, and that was kind of a bummer. I mean, I obviously understand why, but yeah, it's been a while. I was there for Serena's in '99 when she first won. It was great. I was there. I covered when Hingis played Kornikova in the juniors. That was one of the rare times that CBS televised a junior match because they were both so highly hyped that everyone's like, these two are going to be, world beaters, and they became Grand Slam doubles champions. That was great. Those are great times.
Perfect, Richard. That's a great lead into what I wanted to chat with you about today. Because of your experience, I know you were there in '99 when Serena captured her first major. If you will, there was a strong group of Americans at that time. It looks like we still have a strong group. What are some thoughts, looking back to that period with the American players? Could you talk a little bit about that generation of players?
It was a phenomenal generation. As you remember, Brad, that year, '99, that Serena won, 3 of the 4 semifinalists were American. It was Davenport, it was Venus, it was Serena, and Martina Hingis, world number 1, was the 4th. And Serena en route to she had to beat Seles, she had to beat Conchita Martinez, she beat Clijsters 7-5 in the third, coming back, she was down in that match. So I think that tournament absolutely solidified Serena as everyone's like, she's going to be a superstar. But the interesting thing about that is she didn't back that win up for a few years. She went through a drought, and you had Venus coming through, you had Jennifer Capriati coming through, you had Davenport there, and people were like, hey, what the hell's up with Serena? Is she just a flash in the pan? A lot of people thought, oh, Serena wants to go Hollywood, she wants to be an action star. So even then, people were writing her off back in the early 2000s. But it was like you could see the talent that tournament, the way she burned through the field, and to beat back to back the players she beat to win it in '99. To me, that was one of her most remarkable performances, even though it was the first major, because she definitely could have lost to Clijsters early in that tournament. She could have lost, and maybe we wouldn't be talking about her now. And they had a great rivalry also. So it was a special time. But just to get back to your original question, you also had Chanda Rubin, Lisa Raymond, Mary Jo Fernandez. Monica was still playing. So that the depth was phenomenal. And it was a great time to be an American fan, because you knew when you went to those slams, you knew at the money rounds, the semis, the finals, it was going to be an American woman playing for the title. So it was really, really, it was exciting. And, now to come back all these years later and to see Serena close the curtain there, it was great. She was able to beat Kontaveit and go out with a good win, although, kind of sad when you think it's the end of an era.
Yeah, it's interesting, Richard, that you point out that with Serena, there's a pause, and the next thing you know, Venus has that amazing run.
Yeah.
You probably remember the book, Venus Envy, that John Wertheim wrote about.
Yeah. And that book ends where Bill Clinton was president. He calls her after she wins the U.S. Open to congratulate her. One of the first times a sitting president called the U.S. Open champion. And Venus hit him up with lower the taxes a little bit. It was great. Yeah. And it showed you, it's a great point, because it showed you where American tennis was, where the White House, they were riveted. And as you know, the Williams sisters changed the U.S. Open. Arlen Kantarian came in for the USTA, and he created the Saturday night finals because of the Williams sisters, because the whole country was riveted to that story. And, he was thinking we're going to see 5, 6, 7 in a row of Venus and Serena. It didn't quite happen, but they certainly played their share for sure.
And as you mentioned, they had outstanding company at that time with the other Americans, Davenport and Capriati. Kind of surprising Jennifer never won a U.S. Open. Any thoughts on that? I mean, she was so close in '03. Remember?
She was so close. So close. I thought for sure. In fact, if you told me at the start of her career, I would have said that would be the first one she would have won, because one of her classic matches that she lost was to Sellers a few years earlier. But you're right, that year '03, then she lost to Henin, and she had that it was there for the taking there. And the fans, because people think of her as a Florida girl, but she was born in New York. So New Yorkers think of Capriati as a New Yorker. So she had huge fan support, and I think she almost wanted it too bad there. And she had the great classic quarterfinal night match with Serena with the shady calls and all that. And she was such an exciting player. And people forget Jennifer Capriati she was halfway to the calendar Grand Slam when she won Australia and then beat Clijsters to win Roland Garros. So she was a phenomenal superstar. And it's just a shame she wasn't able to continue, because she just lit up the U.S. Open. People really loved her matches. She was so exciting. It's almost like a Nadal type intensity where every point was a battle. It was just so great to see her there.
Yeah, you're right. That was 2001 when she, it was ironic, as you said, she beat Clijsters in the French that year, and then Henin got to the final of Wimbledon. But Jennifer, Wimbledon was going to always be a tougher event for her. But another New York tennis player I'd like to talk about, because I know you're impressed with Jessica Pegula. So I know I'm kind of jumping from that generation to the current generation of American players, but let's make the shift now and talk about this group that's emerging. And let's start with Pegula.
Well, you look at what Pegula did from start to finish, the end of the year, to finish the year in the top 5, where you wouldn't, at the start of the year, people might not have even put her in just the American top 5, to finish in the world top 5. And she did it on every surface. Look what she did in Madrid. Look what she did throughout the American summer. And then, her and Coco also together as a team, qualifying for the WTA finals, the year-end final. But she had a phenomenal run. I think she's overlooked a lot. Part of that is she had those chronic knee injuries and lower body injuries where she just couldn't sustain the rhythm and the health. And now that it's sort of what Jennifer Brady is going through now with a different part of the body, where you feel like if Brady can ever get healthy for 2-3 years in a row, watch out, she could challenge for a slam. And Pegula, what I love about her is the classic American aggressive baseline, or hover right on the baseline, take the ball early, rip the backhand down the line. You saw that with Everett. You saw it with Connors. You saw it with the Williams sisters, with Capriati, Sophia Kenin. It's just a classic sort of American hardcourt aggressive style where she takes the ball on the rise. She's not afraid to really go after the shots. And yeah, she's exciting. I'd say her, you look at her, Danielle Collins also making the AO final. And then you had Coco making the Roland Garros final. I mean, it's a really exciting time for American, women's tennis. And look at someone like Anna Samova, who was a Roland Garros semifinalist a few years back, and then, beats Coco at Wimbledon. She's another dangerous player. So a lot of really talented young Americans. It's a great time for American tennis.
It's a phenomenal time, and that's why I like the idea of, talking about the generation before, it started, dominating in the 90s into the 2000s. And then you really, you paint the canvas with their results this year, with the different players, the multiple surfaces. Obviously Coco, will be a threat at Wimbledon. And that's where she emerged in 2019. And with Pegula, she's a little older than the others, but you mentioned Jen Brady. Boy, it's packed, and we still haven't even, there's Sloane Stevens, there's Madison Keys. I mean, it's amazing that, let me put it to you like this. Would you put good money that we get a U.S. champion next year at a major in the singles with this group of girls?
I would say yes, although, with Iga, the dominance that Iga had, the 37-match win streak, 8 titles, winning 2 of the 4 slams. I mean, Iga's a really super solid number 1 right now. And if you look at, if you put a gun to my head and said, who's the next American woman to win a major, I would say Coco Gauff. But you look at her against Iga, it's a really nightmare matchup for her. She's the last 2 times, I think she's been Bagel 2 of the last 4 sets. It's not a good matchup for her. So, yeah, I mean, my heart says yes, but, I mean, you got to respect what Iga's done at the top of the game, and just her matchups with the American women, it's in her favor. But having said that, Coco Gauff is only 18 years old. She's not going to be 19 until March, and she's already been in a Grand Slam final, as you referenced what she did at Wimbledon, and that was the year that Simona Halep beat Serena in the final, and Coco gave Simona Halep a closer match than Serena did in the final. So Coco Gauff is a legitimate Grand Slam contender in my mind. I think in the next 18 months, yeah, I think she's probably the most likely to win a slam. But as Sophia Kenin showed us in 220, you never know where it's going to come from. And Danielle Collins had a great run in Australia, so you just don't know. The other interesting thing is with Halep now sort of on the doping suspension list, really you could look at Keys number 11 as moves up to number 10 because Halep's not in the picture. America really has 3 top 10 players right now, and Keys gets overlooked a lot because she's kind of up and down. But, you know, when she can ride the lightning and really make the serve, and when she doesn't implode and hit the ball off the fence, she's a powerhouse player, and nobody wants to play her because she can totally dominate the center of the court. So Keys is someone that people don't always give her the respect because she's just so up and down, and you don't know match to match what you're going to get. But when she's on it, boy, she is such an explosive player, and she showed you that to finish number 11 in the world. It's a great run from her after another player with chronic injuries too to come back. She's still a relatively young player, so you'd like to see her as a former U.S. Open finalist come back and maybe get one herself. It's always nice to see a player do it later in their career and really appreciate. Someone like Kerber comes to mind. It was almost more satisfying because she had to put in so many of the hard yards and go through so many of the travails. So I think she'd be one to watch as well.
Yeah, and on that note, it reminds me, I think, was it the 2017 U.S. Open final between Keys? Was that Keys and Sloane that
Keys
year?
And Sloane, yeah. Keys and Stevens, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and she kind of froze in that match. I mean, she kind of froze in that. I mean, all credit to Sloane, totally deserved the win, but it wasn't really key. I mean, she just didn't bring it. So you want to see her get another shot at a slam final.
And it's an assorted cast of characters. I mean, I just the players we've mentioned. There are 10 legitimate U.S. female players that could win a major next year, Richard. I mean, that's not crazy. It sounds crazy, but it's not. You know this game. Like to pick one of the lot is difficult. Do you have any intel on Jen Brady? When you think we will see her next year?
Everything I've read and heard and seen, it was supposedly going to be coming in 2023, but I haven't seen her enter Adelaide or any of that. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a definitive answer, but I would hope it would be this year because she's a lights out player. I mean, she's a beautiful serve, big forehand. It's almost like she almost plays like a man's version in women's tennis. I mean, she really goes after the shot. She has so much spin. Her ball jumps on any surface. She's dangerous. I mean, I really enjoy watching her. Plus, she's a beautiful volleyer. She can hit the classic volley. She can hit the drive volley. She's an aggressive player. She's just really, really fun to watch. It's just a shame that she had such a great run, and then boom, the injuries just knocked her down. But as you know, that's part of the game, unfortunately. But if I had to pick one woman, I would say Coco because I think her upside is there. The other thing I love about Coco is the doubles. And if you look at traditionally the greatest American champions from Billie Jean, Martina, all these they all play doubles. The Williams sisters, Davenport, and Coco's a phenomenal doubles player. It's helped her transition. It's helped the slice backhand. Her volleys have improved. And I think as she incorporates that more into the singles, and plus she's one of the fastest players in tennis. I think the speed, the serve, and the aggression, it's going to be a great package. And just to expand a little bit north, if we're looking at Leylah Fernandez, I'm a huge Bianca Andreescu fan. I always loved Andreescu's style. She's just barely in the top 50. Recently split with Sven Gronfeld, who I have a lot of respect for. So I want to see her continue to push forward. And Leylah, I think, is going to be there. She's another player that had sort of the leg injuries, but came back a little bit at the end of the year. The thing with Coco, she ended the year 5 straight losses. She took a beating at the WTA finals. She looked a little bit burnt out to me mentally. So maybe this break is the best thing for her, sort of reset, refresh, come back strong. But there's no doubt the desire and the hunger and the discipline to do the work every day is there. And if you look at her matches, combined singles and doubles, she's on the court constantly. And that makes you a better match player, in my view, anyway.
Oh, to be sure, Richard. And obviously, the age restriction is lifted. I don't know if that this was the first full year. So to be sure that you're not saying burnout. It really wasn't burnout. It's just like the car came in on fumes.
Yeah.
But like you, I'm a huge admirer of the game of Bianca Andreescu. And what I mean by that is I don't care who she's playing. That's the court I'm going to.
Yeah.
Why don't you share more about your opinion of her? Because like you, I just think she delivers. So go for it. The floor is yours.
Well, I love her, her creativity that she'll play the slice. She'll play, a lot of times it's just bang, bang, whose serve is on, whose return is on, I love that she uses a short angle. She'll pull you in if she knows you don't want to come to the net. She'll drop shot and lob you. She thinks in terms of shot combinations, how to stretch you wide, how to bring you in. She comes in really well. She closes the net really, really well. She has the first serve. She can use the kick to set up the forehand. And I just think when you look at her breakout year, the year she won the Open, she won so many of those 3-setters where she just pulled it out at the end with some sensational play. And when you haven't played in a while and you get in those 3-set grinds, it's hard because you don't have the confidence, you don't have the match repetition. So I think part of that, she was missing the match repetition, but it was only a couple of years ago. She was in the Miami Open final, lost to Ash Barty. I mean, she definitely shows you when she's on and her confidence is there. She's just a magician with the ball, what she can do. And I like that she can take pace off the ball. So I think one of the crazy things in tennis now is with the speed gun, everyone's like, oh, she hits the hardest forward. It's all about how hard you can hit the ball, but taking pace off the ball, putting a different spin on the ball. I mean, Barty showed the world when you have a slice backhand and you can dip it low with no pace, a lot of people can't handle that. They have no answer for that. So I love that Bianca's like she's an intuitive player, but she's a very creative player. And she understands, she has a great court sense, how to use the court. And, you just want to see her stay healthy and get a full year down because she, like you said, if she's playing, that's the court you want to go watch. She's just a crowd-pleasing, electric player with all the shots. She's quick around the court. She fights hard. She gives you emotion. She's just great to watch, and I'd like to see her and Layla both pick it up. But look, it's tough. I mean, there's like 25 women who can break through. I was looking at before you and I got on the call, like the last, I think 8 majors, I think 6 of them had first-time major semifinalists. So even last year we saw Coco, first-time major semifinalist. The year before, we saw Pavlyuchenkova and Krejcikova, first-time. So every year we're seeing a maiden major finalist. Why not 2023? It's just continue the pattern kind of thing.
It's probably the only positive thing about Barty retiring. Because it is unbelievable on both tours. But I'm excited because I think how it is in the United States, Richard. You've been to tournaments in other countries, but in the U.S., we need a U.S. player. You know how it is. Apart from the U.S. Open, that doesn't matter there. But a tournament like Charleston, or you were in Miami this year, and it probably doesn't matter as much in Miami. But when you have all those Americans coming to maybe a smaller tournament, a 250, that's going to help ticket sales. They really have to be Americans because they're not going to draw the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 player outside the country. So I guess what I'm really trying to get at, and I do actually before I get to that, because of what you were just saying about Andreescu, I didn't want to cut you short. You're a big fan of Leylah Fernandez, and even let's talk about her. So I'll readdress the question that I asked you. take this out and editing, hopefully. But let's continue on the Canadian theme and talk about Layla.
Well, I love Layla because of her feistiness, her spirit, and also she has that ability to straddle a baseline, take it on the rise, and really shorten the backswing. And what she can do off the forehand, the angles, and the ability to hit down the line. Also, she has something that innately that you really can't teach in a player, and that's the ability to connect with crowds, with huge crowds, as you saw at the U.S. Open when she made the run to the final, losing to Emma Raducanu, is that she took 20,000 people and made it seem like it was 50,000 people, and that's really, really rare, especially for someone that young, where she's not overwhelmed or intimidated by the crowd. It's the exact opposite. It's like a socket she plugs into the crowd, and she just lights up. Like, she plays even bigger than she is. Connor's had that, obviously, same ability. Nadal has it. I'm not saying she's going to be as great of a champion as them at all. I'm just saying in terms of her ability to connect with a crowd and ride the crowd energy and emotion, that's a really powerful thing. And she has that. It's not artificial. It's not fake. She's able to do that. But, she's a smaller player, so it's all about the footwork, the quickness, getting the ball out in front, taking the ball on the rise. And you got to be super fit, like a David Ferrer kind of thing, super fit, super great footwork. She has that. It's just, can she stay healthy? And how is she going to physically hold up against these bigger, stronger players? I mean, there's a lot. You look at Elena Rybakina, who won Wimbledon. She's a powerhouse player. I mean, she can blow you off the court. You look at someone like Ludmila Samsonova. She's a powerhouse player. She can just hit right through you. If Osaka was healthy and interested, how is she, even though she beat Osaka, that incredible run at the Open, it's just, to me, it's a question of how is she going to be able to handle the bigger, stronger players. But just as far as a competitor and the raw desire and the passion and the hunger and the love of the sport, she gives you all that. So she's just such a fun player to watch, and I really hope for the best for her because she makes it exciting. She makes a tennis crowd seem like a football crowd, and that's really rare to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's why the Connors comparison is so apt, and she is a great competitor. And yeah, she's kind of another one for a different reason that I'll go to whatever court she's on. I mean, I don't take, when I say that, I mean it. I know you know what I mean by when I say that. There's this something more than just, there's more to her and Bianca. It's interesting. I like her competitive grit, and I like everything you said about her stylistically as a player. Now, the Canadian that is sort of, she was off the radar. I don't know if it was just injuries or semi-retirement, but with Picard, and she started to play, got some quarterfinal results in the fall. So if she's got the motivation, she obviously had the toolkit and the skills to reach a Wimbledon final. What are your thoughts about her for next year?
I haven't honestly seen enough of her this year to really say where she's at. She had a serious injury. It was a shoulder, I believe, and she had surgery. I mean, but as you said, she's a Wimbledon finalist. Look what she did in Australia. Look what she did in Roland Garros. I mean, she's had big time results. It's just been a while. I mean, it's been a while, and it's tough to come back. It would be a phenomenal comeback story, not just because of the injuries, but because of the whole imbroglio with the USTA and suing the U.S. Open when she had the fall that really, she believes, really derailed her career. So, I mean, in a way, it would be huge vindication for her if she was able to come back. It's just, God, the women's game is so deep right now. You just want to see her get some traction, sort of stack some good weeks, up against each other. She looks fit. The little I've seen of her, she looks fit. She's going after it. It's hard to say because I haven't seen enough of her, and I haven't seen enough of her against top 50 players recently. And that's really where you can kind of see where they're at when they go. Like someone like Kyrgios, like you always knew he had ability, but when you see him losing to like number 74 in the world on the outer court, you're like, maybe not. But then you put him against the top 10 players. Sometimes that brings out the best in players. I haven't seen enough of her to say, but I'd love to see her come. It would be a great story if she could come back. I mean, just amazing after everything she's been through. And like you said, where she was in the game. You know, it's kind of like our old friend Vera Zvonareva. When you saw her came back after having a baby and everything, just seeing her out there playing qualies after all, you know, being in the Wimbledon final, US Open final, just great to see her back. You just want to see her compete.
That's funny. You meant Azarenka, not Zvonareva, right?
No, Zvonareva. I remember you did an article on Zvonareva years ago.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. Okay. I got confused because I didn't know. I didn't think she had gotten as far. Um, yeah, I remember she had that epic quarterfinal match with Anastasia Mosquina in San Diego. It was at that time they set a record for like the longest third set tiebreaker. That was great. 'Cause, you know, that's another thing. Even though I'm really only supposed to talk about the players from the Americas. In that period where we started off talking about the U.S. players, the Capriatis, Davenports, man, you know, and you alluded to the Belgians, and there were the Russians, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess maybe this works because you know more about the game than I do, especially the way it's been the last 10 years or so. Is that the mix? Is it a similar mix, Richard? And what I'm trying to say is that with the Americans and now Canadians, let's put them in the same group, they're Americans, versus the rest of the world. Is it similar to that period that
I feel like
talking about?
I feel like potentially it could be similar. I just feel like the difference is you got to see some of these North American women, you know, do it repeatedly on different surfaces at different slams, where you saw that with Venus and Serena, and even Davenport, Wimbledon. I realized she wasn't a great clay court player, but you saw her do it at different slams. You saw Capriati do it on clay so you want to see them do it on different surfaces and do it repeatedly. But yeah, I agree. It has that feel that it could be like a powerhouse sort of American movement. And then the rest of the world, there's so many talented players coming out of Europe right now. And, you know, Iga's so young too. If Iga can stay healthy and stay fit, and then you have someone like Ons Jabeur really driving for her nation and for a whole continent to get to number one and to win that elusive slam. So there's a lot of stories at play, but I think you hit on it earlier where you said Ash Barty abruptly retired. I think that changes the whole ball game for a lot of people, because people could not solve that combination that she had. And she was a great server. She was great at holding serve. So I think that does open the door. It remains to be seen how is he going to will Iga back up one of the great years we've seen in decades? It's a question we're going to find out really soon.
Well, selfishly speaking, somebody that roots for the Americans, and I try not to be too biased in that regard, but it's helpful for your general tennis fan, maybe not the sort of casual tennis fan that plays tennis. It always helps, as you know, Richard. We since '03 we still haven't had a man in the men's game, we were spoiled, and the generation you spoke about in the beginning of the American women that were coming against the strong European players. It's really important in the U.S. for these, especially the question I was asking you earlier that I did out of order because I'm rusty, and for these tournaments in the U.S. to really sell tickets, they really depend on American players, don't you think?
Well, you look at Indian Wells, what Taylor Fritz did, winning Indian Wells, and that was a huge moment for a local guy to come through. Yeah, I do think it helps, especially now as you see Roger has transitioned out, Serena has transitioned out, Venus has said she'd like to play in 2023, but we don't know. You know, Rafa just had a kid. We don't know how many more years he's going to play. So then it becomes more important, because those flag bearers, your ambassadors that you counted on for 15, 20 years, you know, they're having families and moving on to different parts of their life. So then it becomes even more magnified. And when you see an American like Delray Beach is an example, when you see an American have a big run in Delray, like Court or Fritz, whoever, it's exciting. People get behind it. Or Houston, we've had a history of some men doing well at the clay courts at Houston. And yeah, I think it definitely matters. It definitely helps. A perfect example is the US Open, Tiafoe's run, beating Rafa. I mean, the place was going bananas there. And Rafa's one of the most popular foreign players to ever play in Arthur Ashe Stadium. But Tiafoe, he just lit the place up. So he has that sort of larger than life personality. And he's a guy that I think can really turn on fans and sell the game. But Fritz is going to be there. I think Fritz is going to be a perennial top 10 player. He can do it on a lot of surfaces. He's super professional, great coach in Mike Russell and Paul Annacone, and he really, really seems to want it. I just don't know if he's that athletically gifted. He doesn't move as well as Alcaraz and Holger Rune and Sinner, some of these younger guys, but his skills are undeniable. He's a beautiful ball striker. A guy like Tommy Paul, I love watching him. I just like his style. I'm not saying he's going to be a perennial top 10 player, but he's a fun player to watch. He can mix in the kick serve, comes to the net a little bit more. And I think with Tiafoe, that was a big thing with Wayne Ferreira, getting him first fit and then getting him use your speed forward. Don't just use it to defend. Use it to take the match to the other guy. And I think that combination, Wayne Ferreira and Tiafoe, I think he's really unlocked a lot. And Wayne Ferreira had a great record against Sampras. He knew how to play the big guys, a great tactical mind. So, and he's a guy that, even though he's South African, he's really a California kind of guy. He spent so much time out there. So it shows you what coaching can do. And, let's hope for the best for those guys going forward. I thought Korda would have a better year than he had this year. I was a little disappointed. I thought that Indian Wells loss kind of took a little bit wind out of his sails, but I'm really high on Korda's game, just the way he plays. He's so smooth. He's such a calm competitor. He likes to play the big guys. I think, the future is really, really is bright for Korda. It's just he's got to get the results to match the talent now.
Richard, I love what you just alluded to with the coaching, mentioning Ferreira with Tiafoe and the record against Sampras. It's a great little stat. The reason I think that they don't get enough credit, number one, I know you feel the same way about the coaches. And I read, I think it was this morning, that David Witt got the Coach of the Year for the WTA with Pagula. That's what I read this morning, and he deserves it. I watched them like you. Richard's one of the kind of guys, when he's a real reporter, if he's at a tournament, he's doing more than just reporting on the matches. He's out watching the practices. He's on the grounds. And he also likes to be in the mix with the fans to give you the whole experience. It's one of the reasons I think his writing stands out amongst any tennis writer out there. He really gets – he's a fan with at heart he's a fan, but his skill as a writer. I was thinking about you. I know I'm just going off on a tangent, but you're a combination of, to me, Bud Collins and Steve Flink. You have the flair of Collins. No, you do. The flair and the humor of Bud Collins with the precise pinpoint accuracy of Steve Flink. So anyone that reads one of your match reports, and you do more than match reports, but you get the flavor because you are out in the mix and you're amongst them. That would be attributed to Bud. And then your description is like Steve. Now, where the hell was I going with this? I'm lost. Oh, the coaching thing. But really, I was just talking about you as a general kick-ass reporter. But back to the coaching thing. Sorry about that, folks, listeners. It's true though. You're a future. You must be in some Hall of Fame. At least in your house. Anyways, Richard alluded to the Tiafoe teamed up with Wayne Ferreira and the dividends it paid. And my point was that I think they're underappreciated. You mentioned Michael Russell before that as well. Then I mentioned David Witt got the award with Pagula Coach of the Year. It's a big deal when sometimes you wonder what's it going to take for this dude. Sometimes it's a coach, don't you think? I mean, the obvious Agassi Gilbert comparison, but I'm going to let you talk now about your feeling that the coaching relationship with a guy you mentioned, Taylor, with Annacone and I think it was Russell.
Yeah.
So why don't you weigh in on the significance? And I know you're going to you're not going to hold back here. What a coach can do for them to turn the page.
Well, I think it's obviously the belief. You want them to believe in themselves and their games, but also that the work that you're doing daily on the practice court, even if you don't see it in that immediate tournament that you're playing, that you trust that what you're doing is laying the groundwork and the foundation for the result to come. And Fritz was really patient that way with Anacone and Russell, where, it didn't, he had the big result in Memphis, and then it was kind of like a couple of years where he was playing and you weren't seeing him where you thought he would be, but he stayed with it, stuck with it, really believed in it. And if you watch his practices, they're very disciplined practices. I went to Wimbledon for the first time in years this year, and I watched a lot of Djokovic practice with Sinner a lot. And you just see by what they're working on, what they're thinking, the shots they need for that specific tournament. So with Fritz, the fascinating thing is just watch for grass, how much they worked on just the low, scooping the ball low, not just with your hand, but getting down with your knees, because he's a tall guy, he's like 6'4", but how they worked on that over and over and over. And you saw he had a great Wimbledon run, probably should have beat Rafa in that match, a wounded Rafa playing hurt, and didn't get it done, but still, kept going, kept striving, and made it all the way through, to the year end. He had a great run. I would say another guy where you saw the coaching really unlock his potential a little bit was Felix, because before Uncle Tony, 0-8 in finals, everyone was talking about him like they used to talk about Agassi. Yeah, he's great, he's talented, can't win the big one. Agassi, he's a joker, can't get it done. He's the Buffalo Bills of, this everything. And the guy's so young. He's like a kid. He's like a baby in pro tennis terms. But just, I think, getting that second voice with Uncle Tony, who has been there, before all these major matches and finals, this guy who can sort of take you outside yourself and look at your game. This is what I'm seeing. This is where we really need to work and improve. This is what you do well. This is what you need to do, more of. And, I was thinking before we did this call, you and I did a clinic years ago in Arizona with Edberg. And I don't know if you remember this, but I've used this in a lot of stories where he told me and you, where he said, if you ask any player in the world, from the top pro to a college, high school, what's your weakness? Every single player could tell you in seconds. Now ask them, it's 5-all, 30-all. What's your strength? How are you going to win the point? And he said, a great player, that's what you think in terms of how am I going to win the point, not how am I going to disguise my weakness and I think a great coach gives you that belief. I always think about Edberg saying that to you and I think, it's 5-all, 30-all. How is Coco? How is she gonna play this point? How's she gonna win it? She has the weapons to do it. So I always kind of look at players in that respect. Are they just gonna try to defend and sort of bob and weave and grind it out, or do they have the tools, the weapons, and more important, the courage to go after it? So I think with coaching, you see the coach able to really instill that. And Felix is a great example. He played lights out the second half of the year. Maybe it just took a little while for some of that repetition to come in. Maybe those losses were just building the scar tissue, but this guy beat Djokovic. I realize it was Laver Cup and maybe it wasn't prime, but he beat Djokovic, and that had to do wonders for him. So I think the coaching is huge, but you also have to want to be coached. You have to be like someone like Kyrgios for a year. Why doesn't he get a coach? He doesn't want to coach. He doesn't want to be coached. So if you don't want to be coached, don't waste your time hiring a coach, because you want to be receptive to what they're telling you. And just a last point on the coaching, I did a clinic in Mexico with Uncle Tony, like right before the pandemic. And somebody asked the young Rafa, what was his greatest gift that you saw when he was a little kid? What did you see in this kid? And Tony said, what I saw was he was smart enough to understand, I don't know. I should really listen to this guy. He's trying to help me. He was smart enough to know, I'm a kid. I don't know everything. Let me be like a sponge and try to absorb it. So in other words, what he was saying was his willingness to be coached and to work as a kid. That's what, more than the footwork, more than the stamina, more than the desire, he had an awareness, like, I want to learn, I want to get better, I should really try to listen and absorb it. And that was a really profound thing for me to hear Tony say that. Of all the qualities, that was the one that he picked out. It was fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is fascinating and not surprising, especially with an individual like Rafa. That I think it's and it sounds like from what you shared now is that the X's and O's are there. Although you did mention with Taylor the nuances of the grass. I like that, especially with a guy like Anacone. So, but more in most cases they're fairly developed the game, but the tweaking with Fritz is a little different. But that psychological deal, come on, let's look at Gilbert and Roddick,
right,
or Gilbert and Agassi.
Right.
But especially with Roddick, with both guys, I mean, What did Gilbert famously say? I don't do grips. You're a Gilbert fan. What do you, let us know what does that mean, Richard? I don't do grips.
I think he's talking about the Bud Lights, you know. He does. Yeah. He changed. I mean, you could look at Darren Cahill, the same thing with Halep. I mean, it wasn't so much technical as it was, composure, psychological, mental discipline. Like, you have the game, you're an incredibly skilled player. You just got to accept the fact there's going to be ebbs and flows in a match. And when the downtimes come, don't freak out and throw your racket, just get back to it. So sometimes you just need that sort of guiding hand on your shoulder. Like, it's okay. Like, this is professional sports at the highest level. This is stuff that's going to happen. So sometimes it's that, sometimes it's technical. I think in Tiafoe's case, with just to get back to where he started with Ferreira, is that Ferreira knew how to play all court tennis. He knew how to use a slice. He knew how to come in. And he's like, here's a guy who's so gifted in terms of his movement, speed, explosiveness, leaping ability. Why not use that? And he used that beautifully at the Open and applying the pressure at the right times. And I think that that's sort of using the diversity in his game. If he can continue to do that, I have no reason to think he can. I mean, yeah, Tiafoe, the future's there for him, and it's taken him a while, but that's just part of the process. Sometimes it takes longer, so it just does.
Yeah, the coaching carousel is fascinating, but I really like your insights on it. I do remember the Scottsdale Stefan Edberg fantasy camp. I believe it was 2003, and Martina Hingis showed up because it was put on by Adidas.
Right.
And you had a great interview with her there because she had, I think at that point, had retired or was just coming back. That was a lot of fun. And I know that you've always had a good understanding of the coaches. Maybe what we can conclude today. I read of all the Nick Bollettieri tributes, yours is again what I alluded to, your gift as a writer. And I'm paraphrasing, but when Nick's at the pearly gates or the Grim Reaper meets him with a sickle, he's going to show up with a tennis racket and teach him an inside-out forehand. Am I close?
Nick was, I mean, Nick was the greatest guy. And, the great thing about him is when you talk to him, you left the conversation almost feeling like you're elevated. You just felt better about your life, about tennis. He just made you feel like, hey, things are going to be okay. He just had that sort of positive energy and that fuel and that passion. He was just such a great guy. And just as a person, what I really respected about him when I started, I was like right out of I mean, I was a kid, and he could have easily blown me off. Like, I don't know you. You're not Bud Collins. You're not Steve Flink. You're not. And he didn't. He didn't at all. He took the time to really talk to me as like I was someone that deserved to be talked to. He showed me respect when I was just really, really at the very beginning, and I always, remember that. And he, not just for me, he was like that with everybody. And that. I mean, him when he did an interview, and he gave you his time. He gave you his time, and he gave you his truth, and that's all you can ask for when you're interviewing someone, that they're honest. And he was always honest. And to me, that's the ultimate respect, that he trusted you enough to be honest with you. And boy, you look at the players he touched and the lives, it's just unbelievable, the talent that he touched. And the great thing about Nick, even though he's gone, is whenever I turn on Tennis Channel and I hear Jimmy Arias or Jim Courier or any of the Mark Knowles, any of the people that went through the academy, you can hear little bits of him coming through the commentary, some of the stuff, his aphorisms, the stuff he believed. Just like when I hear John McEnroe, I can hear Tony Trabert, the stuff he taught him. Always cover the line when So it's the beauty of sort of the American. If we look at American tennis as a giant family tree, that branch, he's not here, but all the people he touched, they're branching out in a different way. And Courier and Arias and Knowles and all these people that went there, they're continuing to sort of spread his message and his view through the commentary. So he lives on in that way. And he was just such a great ambassador. Like you mentioned, Bud Collins at the beginning, another just great guy where they just embrace people. They welcome people into the game. And tennis really needs that. Because when I was a kid, it was the exact opposite. Like if you weren't at the right country club, if you didn't know the right people, they'd throw us off the courts. They'd kick us off. You need people that really open the Gates to everybody. And Nick Bollettieri, Bud Collins, Steve Flynn, all these people are like that. Like, come on in, Billie Jean King, you know, we want you in the game. And so it's a devastating loss from that perspective as an ambassador for the game, but just he gave so much. And just a great guy. I just feel really privileged to have, you know, met him and known him. He's great. And the way he thought about the game, I mean, it reminded me a little, you know, Pancho Segura really well. And I interviewed him before he passed, and he was the same way, even up until his 80s. He was watching tennis 24/7. He could tell you the next player, who's coming up, who, you know, their minds were just so analytical, and they had seen so much tennis, so many champions. They had a perspective that was just unmatched. So we really need to treasure people like that because, you know, they connect the past and the present and the future of the game. So they're really, really important. I'm glad the Hall of Fame really honored him. And he's only one of 5 coaches in history to be in the Hall of Fame. And all 5 of those coaches are legendary coaches. And he really, you know, he deserves it fully. He was a great guy.
Yeah, boy, like I said, I would encourage anybody out there to read Richard's article on Nick on tennisnow.com. It was there's so many out there, but yours, like so many of your pieces, so much of your work is it's fresh and unique, and it really is interesting. I learned a lot from you. I still do. I get inspiration. How you come up with the creative headlines on a daily basis, covering a sport like this is so difficult. And I know there's something you guys might not know about Richard. He is so self-deprecating, and he doesn't take a compliment easy, but he deserves it. Richard, the last thing I want to ask you is if you had one player like, you know, Shelton, he had some amazing challenger results. Well, I guess I shouldn't just say one, but maybe do you want to just briefly talk? I know I've kept you on way longer than I asked you to be on. Maybe a young female player and a young U.S. or American player on the men's side as well. Just a quick
couple people. Yeah, a couple people we haven't touched on I want to mention was Brooksby. I mean, I think Brooksby is going to get better and better. It's like, to me, it's like, can he do it on clay and the slower surfaces? But as a hardcore player, I mean, he's going to be there. And a guy I've been really impressed with just his work ethic and his commitment is Brandon Nakashima. I mean, he's a real tough guy. He really puts in the work. I really like watching him. He's hard-nosed. There's no BS. There's no drama. He's not a prima donna. He's just an old school, I'm going to come here. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to keep doing it on every surface. I got the chance to watch him at practice at Wimbledon. He's waiting for a court. He just starts hitting on the sidewalk with his coat. I mean, that's how much he was into it. Now, I know the knock on him, well, you know, his forehand maybe isn't as good, and he's gone recycled up through a bunch of coaches, but I think that guy really, I'm not saying he's going to be a Grand Slam champion. I'm not saying he's going to be a top, but I think that guy is going to be a perennially tough player because just his dedication, his commitment, what I've seen from him, I mean, he really works hard. So I would say those are 2 that we didn't really touch on. Is Brooksby, you know, has already been there. He's already made his mark. But I think Nakashima is so young, too. He's so young, you know. I guess on the women's side, one player I really enjoy watching is Katie McNally. You know, had the great run with Taylor Townsend together, the new mom and the young, together to get to the U.S. Open doubles final where they lost, but played a really good match. I like her because she's a classic volley game. In fact, Coco Gauff's first pro match ever was in Miami against Katie McNally, the doubles partners, and she was coming in on that, serving and volleying there. So she's a lot of fun to watch. I don't know where, you know, she's going to be a perennially top 10 doubles player. I don't know her ceiling in singles, but she's just so fun to watch. And it's nice from an American perspective to have an attacking player. As you know, when we had Lisa Raymond or we had Gigi Fernandez, all the, players that could come in and close, you like, just for style diversity, you like to see that. So that's great.
Richard, thank you so much. And again, I apologize, but when, it's been a long time since we've gotten the chance to do this. And as far as I'm concerned, this is, you're kind of a go-to guy. You have that same memory, photographic memory like Steve Flink, and the passion of Collins and the rest of the people doing what you do. So Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brad. It's great to catch up. Let's not wait another 5 years. And I didn't get to share the story about we had the big showdown in Hawaii when we first met Coco Vandeweghe. But if I'm ever invited back on the show, I'll bring that story up because that's a mini story.
Okay, well,
so
yeah.
there's a lot of facets to the story we don't want to really get into. But that's where we first met Coco. We met the young Coco Vandeweghe, and we both said this kid is going to be a top. I mean, I remember she was so good where neither one of us really wanted to hit with her because she was just beating up on everybody. I think she was 13 years old, and we were both like, this girl's going to be, and she did it, so that's for the next time.
Yeah.
It's like the Olympics. We come every 4 years, we get together. That'll be the next next time.
That's the teaser, bro. I mean, I think, listen, yeah, well, the things that we could talk about from that Hawaii trip alone, which, by the way,
I'm going to test your memory. Do you remember who was coaching Coco Vandeweghe when we met her in Hawaii? Do you remember her coach on that trip? I'm not saying that was but do you remember who it was?
Okay, I'm going to first remind listeners that this fantasy camp included Jennifer Hopkins, now
Right.
Jennifer Dent, Elena Yachova, right? I believe Belarusian or Russian player.
Yeah.
So Hopkins, then Yachova. And who is the Slovakian, or was she from?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
She was the highest ranked of the trio.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm deflecting because of the question. Now, I know her mom was there, but that's not the answer you're looking for. Was it Don Sands?
No.
Was it okay, so it wasn't an official. Okay, was it an official coach? Oh, I'm nervous. Oh, the Italian dude.
No, you're thinking of. I know who you're thinking of. He was coaching the Russian.
Marco. Yeah, he was coaching.
Yeah, I know who you're
Gosh, I got one more guess.
You definitely know who it is. You definitely know it. You're just drawing a blank, but I know that because we had conversations.
Oh, Vic Braden.
No, Vic Braden was there. He was there, but he wasn't He wasn't, but he was there. He was definitely there. He was great.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. I got.
But you're getting close. It was. I'll give you a hint. It was a man. It was definitely a man.
Okay, but I'm glad I knew that Braden was. Oh gosh,
Vic Braden was great. We could talk about Vic Braden too. He had some great.
Yeah, the next time we could do a Braden, Bollettieri, and Lansdorf. Yeah. All the coaches. Gosh, okay, I got to pull this out. So it's a man. I gave up. No, I shouldn't give up. Was he a former player? Can I get one more hint?
I guess that trip left more of an impression on my life than it did yours because I remember what he said about her. I remember he was really hot, and I remember I told her what she had to work on. I remember we had a long talk with him. I remember.
Well, okay. Well, just I give up. Sorry, mate.
Taylor Fritz's father.
Guy Fritz.
That's right.
Okay. Well, folks, that's a great. You know what? If they don't come back for more of that story, then that's all I have to say about that. But wow, memories.
At that time, the young Taylor Fritz was playing basketball and lacrosse more than I remember him telling me that. Oh, if my kid only played tennis, he'd be great, but he likes basketball and lacrosse better. And now here we are years later, and his kid is top 10 in the world. So
well, that was December of 2004, Richard.
Yeah, he told us that Coco Vandeweghe absolutely had the ability to be. Yeah, he knew what he had. He knew He knew. He said, yeah, she absolutely could play and he was right. And she was 13 years old, and she just transitioned from volleyball or basketball to tennis. She'd only been playing tennis I want to say less than 2 years. I mean, competitively, she hadn't been playing long at all. And this guy had the eye to see. He knew what she was. He was right.
I mean, we did. He's right. We wanted no part of her on the practice court. And Richard was a much stronger player than I was. He won the tournament. He gave me the trophy. And here's why he did it. He did. He won the meet. They had a media tournament. He won the tournament. And
you won the tournament. You won the tournament. I remember specifically she was going to play us 2 against her, and I was like, I just can't go out. I can't even see your serve. What am I doing out there? That's one of the only times a pro player ever in my life asked me to hit, and I was like, I just can't. And she was a kid. She was 13, 14 years old. And I was like, I just can't hang. I just don't. I get destroyed. I just don't.
That's because with the wind,
I don't know if you
and
remember, they had like the University of Hawaii players. She schooled all. I mean, she beat them all, and he was a Division I. I mean, and she was a kid. She just totally took them out. And I'm like, if she's beating D1 players, I have no business going out. I mean, it's just not even. But it was nice of her that she thought we were legitimate. She wanted both of us to play her. And I remember we were both like, no, thanks, but no thanks. I'll never forget.
I mean, with her kick serve and the wind that day,
it was really windy. Yeah, it was really windy there. It was.
She hit a kick serve into the deuce court, and with that wind, it literally went over the fence. I mean, there was no pace on it. The wind, you remember
the one time I hit against her, she hit a kick serve and bounced over the lamppost on the other side of the court. It went over the fence. I'm like, what do you do? What do I need, a crane to stand up there? Like, you gotta be kidding me. You're 13 years old. Cut me some slack. Like, hit a body serve, do something. Yeah, it was pretty.
Oh yeah, the kicker with the wind was brutal, and she had a no take no prisoners vibe, and yeah, I was scared, and you were scared, and I think
because she's not going to throw you a courtesy game. She's not going to throw you a bone. Like, if she can win every point, you're going to lose every point. Like, she's not looking to make friends, or she's just looking to school you, and she was really good at that.
Yeah, the competitive spirit was there. I mean, she was taking no prisoners, and we wanted no part of it. I seemed like I had pulled a hamstring, tying my shoe, and you're like, dude, you can't pull that. Now what am I going to do? And Richard was worried about having to go out solo with her. He's like, you can't pull the old hamstring, tying your tennis shoe. He's like, come on, dude. And I'm like, I got to go. Where's the trainer? And Richard was on deadline, thankfully, so he got out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been painful. Yeah. All right. Hey,
listen, it's great speaking with you. Great catching up. And,
thank you.
Yeah. And let's not wait another 5 years.
Right. No, we promised everybody that. And I actually have to sign off. And I think I got to leave it on the high note and remind listeners to follow us on Spotify. You should subscribe to QualityShot Tennis.com. I'm nervous. Richard got me. I'm flustered. Let me try it again. Just wherever you tune in and listen to these things, like it. If you don't like it, well, I mean, why wouldn't they like it, Richard? They gotta like it. Anyways, we're out of here. Hey, happy holidays. And so we don't have to wait 5 years. We'll just wait a year. We'll do it in January.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
Good seeing you guys.
Good seeing you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Bye.